Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, here with attorney Rachel Alters, and we're going to talk about one of Rachel's recently resolved cases. And Rachel, this was a application case which we regularly help people apply for long-term disability benefits. So in this video, we'll talk about what you were able to do for this particular claimant, what the facts and circumstances were, and then we'll provide some tips about applying for long-term disability benefits that can help people who are interested in pursuing benefits under their policy. So tell us a little bit about your particular claim.
I represent a general surgeon who obviously works a lot of hours operating on patients, and it's a very strenuous job. And he had had a previous claim probably about a year ago for his shoulder. He had shoulder surgery, so he did go out. The shoulder was repaired and he got back to 100%, but in the meantime, he had had ongoing chronic back issues. So this was an issue with his being able to stand for long periods of time and stay in a certain position for long periods, which is required when you're operating on patients. So he tried for a very long time to keep his full-time schedule as a surgeon, but the back problems were really hurting him. He ended up having back surgery.
Oh, wow.
And the surgery did help him a little bit, but he still had a lot of pain, and it wasn't so much that he couldn't do anything. It was after he had been in the OR, for 10, 12 hours, he was suffering at the end of the day where it would affect his ability to operate the next day. So his doctor suggested that he cut his hours in half, and that's what he did. So he's still operating, but he's doing half the hours, and he was very concerned about being able to get approved because there's a lot of, ins and outs to getting your claim approved when you're a physician still working, and there's also an income component to all of it. So he called for my help, and I was able to help him.
So at what stage of his claim did he contact you?
He had not filed the application yet.
Is that normal for doctors, business professionals, anyone really who's looking to file, to call you before they've even filed a claim?
Absolutely.
All right, and why is that advantageous?
I prefer they call me before they file the claim, because once the claim is denied, it's impossible to erase what's already been put into the record. So if the claim forms aren't filled out the way they need to be filled out, or the doctors aren't filling out their attending physician statements properly, you can't erase all that. So if you start with me and I'm able to help you from the get-go, it's much better, and the claimants are usually much better off. It doesn't guarantee that they'll get approved, but it gives them a much better chance.
I often have claimants that call me, whether it's months or could be a year or 2 years, because a lot of people, if but for an accident, they're working with chronic medical issues.
Right.
And they don't want to give up their jobs, because clearly the doctor is not going to make more on disability, or probably even close to what he was making. And most people who have disability aren't going to make anywhere near on disability compared to what they were making when working. So people try to work through these issues for a while, and that brings up a whole nother set of issues, because they say, oh, you were working with your medical issues, why now did you stop?
Exactly.
So it is very advantageous, because like we always say, you're setting the script, because what you present to them, like you said, you can't undo. So if they even choose the wrong date of disability, or they don't present sufficient medical evidence, or don't necessarily have the doctor fill out the claim form correctly, or they don't fill out the claim. There's 100 different things that go on. And we have other videos where we talk about tips for applying for long-term disability benefits, which I suggest people search our website or our YouTube channel and look for. That will help them. But which disability company or companies were you dealing with in this claim? Because I know often doctors have 1, 2, or 5 different policies. So what were you dealing with in this claim?
Sure. I believe it was Standard was one of them, and then Sun Life was his group policy, and then I think Ameritas might have been another one. But there were 3, and we were successful in getting him approved, and he was very, very happy about it. But even though he got approved, it doesn't mean they're going to keep him on claim. So we spend a lot of time and energy trying to make sure that not only do you get approved, but that you stay on claim for as long as you need it.
What are the challenges, if any, when a claimant that you're representing has a disability policy from multiple carriers, because they're not all the same?
No. It's always a challenge, because the definition of disability is different in every policy. So that's, for example, the group definition is going to be different than an individual policy that you buy your own. So an individual policy tends to be with an ONOC definition throughout. And then the group policies tend to be only can you do your own occupation for 24 months, then they change. So that's always a challenge. And they're always looking for different things, different companies require, different, some of them want more financials, others, are more interested in CPT codes and, what surgeries you did before, what you're doing after. And so it is a challenge because you have to juggle, several different adjusters, and some of them are easier to work with than others, and some claims are easier to get approved than others.
Now, this particular claim is interesting because you said the doctor, your client's obviously a fighter. He doesn't want to give up work. He had shoulder surgery, filed a claim, went back to work and said, thank you, I don't need you guys anymore.
Correct.
Then he has back surgery, and now he's, and general surgeons, we've represented tons of general surgeons, very physical job, very demanding job. Sometimes you think you're going in for 30 minutes, you end up for 2 hours. You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes also a lot of time waiting around for the OR to open up and things like that. But what you did say is that now he's back to working a certain percentage of time.
Correct.
That's what's known as a residual disability claim. Many doctors unfortunately don't realize they have these policies and sometimes try to go back to work and never make a claim, try to work in a limited capacity for a couple months or a year, and then seek total disability. So this doctor was savvy enough to reach out to say, hey, is there something I can do here with this policy from a residual disability standpoint?
Right.
Do all of his policies have the same residual disability language, or is that something that you're having to balance?
No, they're all different, and they all have different formulas as to how they figure out how much the monthly benefit will be. So one policy, they look at what his pre-disability income was, but different policies determine that in different ways. So his group policy will look at his income from the last 12 months and take the average monthly income, and that's going to be his starting point, his
Right.
pre-disability income. Where the private policies will take the highest income out of the previous 3 years.
Right.
And that will give him a better advantage, assuming that maybe the last year he was not doing so great with the pain in the back and wasn't
Right.
able to work as much. So
And maybe even the COVID year, he wasn't doing as many surgeries, so his
Exactly.
income may have been down.
Exactly. So the income is a different income, and that does affect the amount of benefit that he's getting, because there's a formula that they look at and they decide, with the group policy, it's a little different than the individual policy, but, and the group policy's definition of residual income changes after 24 months as well. So there's a lot of different factors. You have to be on top
Right.
of all the policy language.
So the point is that there's a lot of moving parts, and I
Yeah.
wanted the person who's watching this video to know that it's not just submitting the application and then they look at your numbers. The residual disability claims actually require a lot more management than a total disability claim. I also know that you're reporting on a monthly basis to not 1, 2, but 3 disability carriers. And
Correct.
why are they asking for information every single month in these particular claims?
Well, they need his pay stubs. So they need, if you're paid biweekly or weekly or monthly, they need to see the pay stubs every single time you get paid in order to determine what the benefit is. So that's the first thing that they need. And if they don't get those pay stubs in a timely manner, they don't send out the check. So we make sure that all those pay stubs are being collected. They also want to see the CPT codes. They want to know, make sure that what you're actually doing is really what you say. So for example, if the doctor's claiming that he had to cut his surgeries and work in half,
Right.
so they want to look at the pre-disability CPT codes, compare them to what they're doing, and they do that on an ongoing basis, because maybe the doctor is going to take on, once he gets on claim, he's going to take on many more surgeries and be back to what he was beforehand, and then he's not technically disabled under their terms.
Now, this doctor also potentially has the option to give up surgery
Sure.
and maybe do, if his production before he became disabled was a certain percentage of surgeries versus non-surgery, then he could be totally disabled and potentially work in another occupation and still collect his full benefit.
Right.
So I'm assuming that's a discussion that's been had with this particular doctor, but that's a very, it's a complicated analysis to look and say, well, why can you do the other job but you can't do your surgery job?
Exactly.
So,
and he's also in his 40s, so he's young.
He's super young.
And he does not want to give up his profession. He just realizes that physically he's got limitations.
So in the scenario I'm discussing where he could potentially do something else if he stopped surgery and then be totally disabled, does he waive the right to seek a total disability because he's receiving residual disability, say even for the next 10 years? Could he eventually become totally disabled?
Absolutely, but it would have to be shown in the records. So you can't just one day decide, I'm going to give this up and get total disability. They're going to want to see that your medical records indicate that your condition has progressed, gotten worse, and that your doctors are now saying, you're no longer able to work 20, 30 hours a week. We now say that you should no longer operate due to your, progressed condition.
So I always find there's this interesting, the total versus residual disability analysis, but it's often more difficult to prove someone's totally disabled than residually disabled, because while the definitions of residual disability, and I know from our knowledge of the standard Sun Life and Ameritas policies, are basically all different.
Right.
The bottom line might be with all of them is that you can't perform either one or more of your important duties, or you can't perform your duties for as much time as you used to before, which is a far more liberal definition than saying you're unable to perform the substantial material duties of your occupation.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to prove that you can't do one or more or not as much time than to say I can't do
at all. Right.
So,
right.
But look, it's great that it has it. It's a great benefit that carriers offer. It's not always found in all disability policies. I know the Sun Life one will probably become an issue for your client after the 2-year mark, but it's great that you got all 3 of them approved, because it's not easy, even if it is residual.
He actually had a 4th policy with MetLife, but there was no residual, so we couldn't apply. And he wasn't even aware.
And because he bought one of those private MetLife disability policies.
And didn't realize he didn't purchase residual. So.
Well, that's an issue.
We'll save that for if it goes on to total.
All right. Well, if you're someone out there who's looking to apply for long-term disability benefits, no matter who the disability insurance company is, feel free to reach out to Rachel, myself, any of our disability lawyers. No matter where you live in the country, we're always available to assist you, and we always provide a free initial phone consultation. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.